People say money can buy anything: power, influence, silence. But on one ordinary Tuesday morning, Daniel Hartmann, the billionaire whose face appeared on financial magazine covers, walked into my own mansion unannounced, and what I witnessed in my own kitchen left me frozen in the doorway, unable to speak. My housekeeper, Miriam Johnson, a quiet black woman whom I barely even noticed most days, was kneeling on the kitchen floor with my 2 young daughters. And what she was doing, what I saw in that moment of pure, unexpected intimacy, didn't just change my perception of her, it changed my life forever. If you've ever been underestimated, if someone has ever treated you like you were invisible, or if you simply believe in the quiet power of kindness, stay with me. Like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, because this story is living proof that dignity and kindness can transform even the coldest and most arrogant heart. My name is Daniel Hartmann. At least, that's the name the world knows. The man with the tech companies, the global investments, the luxury homes on 3 continents, and a name printed in magazines I never asked to read. But deep down, in the sterile silence of my sleepless nights, I knew the truth. I had everything, except a heart that could actually feel. My life was an equation. Numbers. Deals. Ruthless efficiency. I grew up believing that people were tools, useful, replaceable, and, ultimately, forgettable. It's not that I hated anyone. I simply didn't see them. Not really. Including Miriam. She had worked in my house for almost 2 years. And in those 2 years, I could barely describe her face from memory. She was a silent presence, always punctual, always in her immaculate uniform. Always with the same soft, polite smile, the same cleaning gloves, and the same respectful greeting, "Good morning, Mr. Hartmann." And every single day, I would walk right past her, my eyes glued to the stock ticker on my phone, without lifting my gaze. I'd murmur a "good morning" that I'm not even sure she heard. Not once did I stop to wonder who she was, what she dreamed of, where she came from, or what invisible, crushing weight she might be carrying on her heart. But life, as I discovered, has a strange and sometimes cruel way of exposing you to the truth, of ripping the blindfold from your eyes at the exact moment you least expect it. That Tuesday, I arrived home unusually early. It was barely 10 in the morning. My main meeting, a hostile negotiation that was supposed to consume my entire day, had ended abruptly in a storm of shouting and threats. Investors demanding impossible results. Partners complaining about my leadership style. All the deafening noise of my world, all that stress, was echoing in my skull like a war drum. I wanted only one thing: silence. Absolute, heavy silence. Peace. So when I parked my car and stepped into my mansion, I expected to find it empty and quiet as a tomb. And I heard voices. Soft voices, but clear, coming from the kitchen. I felt an instant surge of irritation. Who is here? Who dares to be talking in my house at this hour? I walked faster, my polished Italian leather shoes hitting the marble floor of the foyer like a judge's gavel. I was going to restore order. Then I stopped. I stopped dead in the doorway of the kitchen. And I saw it. A scene so simple, so utterly ordinary, and yet, for me, so profoundly shocking, so impossible to ignore. Miriam, my housekeeper, was on her knees on the floor. She was still wearing her rubber cleaning gloves. In front of her, sitting cross-legged on the small wooden mat, were my 2 daughters, Lily, 7 years old, and Emma, 5. But they weren't playing. They weren't laughing. They had their tiny hands clasped together, in a gesture of prayer. Their heads were bowed. Their eyes were shut tight. And Miriam was praying with them. She wasn't preaching. It wasn't a sermon. It was a soft, warm prayer, almost a whisper. She wasn't imposing anything. She was sharing. She was speaking of peace, of not being afraid, of knowing they were loved. But it wasn't just the act of praying that stopped me. It was the way she looked at them. Just before they closed their eyes, I saw her smile at them. A smile of such pure, genuine tenderness, as if they were the most precious souls on earth. As if every word of that prayer was an invisible shield she was weaving to protect them from all the darkness the world could ever hold. My daughters, children born into unimaginable wealth, into a world of privilege, with every opportunity money could buy, were there, on the kitchen floor, clinging to Miriam's words as if they were drinking cool water after days of thirst. And I just stood there, invisible in the doorway, watching a complete stranger give my own children what I, their father, had never had the time, or the heart, or the capacity, to give them. She was giving them gentleness. Connection. A moment of real peace in a house that, I now realized, was full of everything except that. It hit me, with a painful, clarifying force, that this woman, this housekeeper I barely noticed, this employee I paid to be invisible, saw my daughters more clearly, more deeply, than I ever had. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I felt something inside me crack. A fissure so sharp, so deep, it felt like a rib snapping in two. I looked at my daughters, sitting on the floor in their expensive dresses but with anxious faces. I looked at Miriam's face, which was full of a warmth I didn't recognize. And then, I remembered my own childhood. A cold, sterile house. A father who only spoke in commands, who measured his son's worth by his achievements, not his character. A mother who loved me, yes, but who was too terrified of my father to ever contradict him, too broken to offer tenderness. I grew up in a house full of everything, except affection. I grew up believing that emotions were a weakness. That affection slowed you down, made you vulnerable. That silence and hardness were synonyms for strength. But in that kitchen, on that ordinary Tuesday, I saw a truth I had spent my entire life avoiding: true strength isn't cold. True strength isn't distant. True strength is gentle. Miriam opened her eyes first. And she saw me. Her body tensed instantly. She put a hand to her chest and scrambled to her feet, immediately lowering her head in submission. "Mr. Hartman. Please forgive me, sir. I didn't hear you come in. The girls, they were very upset this morning, they were crying, and they just asked me to." I lifted a hand. Not to silence her harshly, but because, honestly, I couldn't find my own voice. I walked toward her slowly. My daughters, finally noticing me, ran to hug my legs, but my eyes remained fixed on Miriam. "They asked you to pray?" I finally managed to whisper, my throat tight. She nodded, still not daring to meet my eyes. "Yes, sir. They said they felt very lonely. That they missed you. That they were scared because you and their mother always seem angry. And I just wanted to comfort them. It's the only way I know how. Please, forgive me, sir." There it was. The arrow, straight into the center of my chest. My daughters felt lonely. In a 10-bedroom mansion. With access to every toy, every gadget, every privilege money could buy. Lonely, because of me. Because of my absence. My coldness. And this woman my world considers the help, a service worker, was holding them together with nothing but the strength of her heart. I swallowed hard. The knot in my throat was painful. "Thank you, Miriam," I said. The words felt foreign, unfamiliar on my tongue. Too small. Too inadequate to carry the weight of what I was feeling. But Miriam looked up, surprised. And she smiled. A genuine, relieved smile. As if those two simple words were enough. For the next few weeks, I began to watch her. Really watch her. Not with the suspicion of a boss, or the judgment of a superior. But with awe. With an almost anthropological curiosity. I saw how she tied my daughter's shoes while telling them quiet stories about courage and honesty. I saw how she wiped their tears after a fall, never once shaming them for crying, telling them that tears were just the heart's way of cleaning itself. I heard her humming old spirituals from her childhood while she cooked their lunches, filling the house, which had always been so silent and sterile, with a warmth I had never noticed. And slowly, day by day, I realized something terrifying and deeply humbling: my children weren't thriving because of their wealthy, powerful, successful father. They were thriving. They were emotionally healthy. They were kind. Because of a woman who earned less in a month than I spent on a single business dinner. A woman whose heart carried a resilience, a strength, and a wisdom that I, with all my degrees and my vast empire, had never learned. A woman the world, and I, had tried to overlook, but whom my daughters saw as a safe harbor, as a home. Suddenly, I no longer felt like the richest man in the room. I felt like the poorest. The confrontation, however, didn't come from me. It came from the world I belonged to. One afternoon, I was hosting a small reception at the mansion for some potential investors. I overheard two of them, old acquaintances, whispering near the kitchen. "Is that the black nanny Daniel was talking about?" one said. "Not a nanny, I think she's the housekeeper," corrected the other. "Either way, she shouldn't be so involved with the children. It looks unprofessional, don't you think? Those kinds of emotional attachments are messy. They always lead to problems." For the first time in my adult life, I felt rage. A pure, clean rage that wasn't rooted in my ego or a deal gone wrong. It was a protective rage. I turned, walked over to them, and spoke with a voice so cold and quiet it cut through their murmuring instantly. "That woman, Mrs. Johnson, is worth more than both of you combined. And if I ever hear another word of disrespect toward her in my home, our business association will be permanently concluded. Is that clear?" They stared at me as if I had completely lost my mind. Maybe I had. Maybe I had finally lost the cold, empty parts of myself that I had mistaken for strength. I didn't care. Miriam had given my family something priceless. And I was going to protect her dignity with the same ferocity she had shown in protecting my daughters' hearts. But the real revelation, the final twist in this story, came one evening, about a week later. I walked into the playroom after a long, grueling day of meetings. Lily and Emma were on the floor, drawing. Miriam was beside them, helping them color a picture of a sunrise. But when she stood up to greet me, I noticed her wince in pain. She moved with a stiffness I hadn't seen before. As she stood, Lily, my 7-year-old, tugged on the sleeve of my suit jacket. "Daddy," she whispered, her eyes wide with a secret, "did you know Miriam doesn't have a house anymore?" My chest tightened. I looked up sharply at Miriam. She froze, her face flooding with panic and embarrassment. "Sir, please, I didn't want them to tell you. It's not your problem, I'm handling it." But the truth, pushed forward by the unfiltered honesty of a child, spilled out. The apartment building where she lived, in a modest neighborhood on the other side of town, had been abruptly sold to a new investment fund. The new owners had doubled the rent overnight, with no warning. She couldn't pay it. She had been quietly and legally evicted. For the past 2 weeks, this woman, this pillar of strength, had been sleeping on her sister's living room sofa, in a crowded apartment, and then traveling 2 hours on 3 different buses every morning, just to arrive at my home before sunrise. All of this, while smiling. All of this, while patiently listening to my daughter's small problems. All of this, while hiding her own desperate struggle, so as not to bother me. Something inside me finally snapped. Not anger. Not pity. It was a cold, absolute conviction. She had been carrying my family on her back. Now it was my time to carry her. "Miriam," I said gently, but with an authority that allowed no argument. "Please come with me." I took her downstairs to my office. She followed, trembling, probably thinking I was about to fire her for bringing her problems to my home. I walked to my desk. I opened the safe. I pulled out a contract, but it wasn't a contract of employment. It was a contract of opportunity. "I want to give you a home, Miriam," I said, my voice sounding strange, thick with an emotion I couldn't name. "A new apartment, in this neighborhood, paid for by me. I want to give you a salary that triples what you currently earn. Full medical and dental benefits for you and your entire family. Anne. I want you to lead a new project." She was staring at me, her eyes wide, completely bewildered. "I'm creating a new foundation," I continued. "A foundation dedicated to supporting single mothers and underpaid service workers in this city. A foundation that will bear your name, the Miriam Johnson Foundation." She burst into tears. Not small, quiet tears. But the kind of racking, desperate sobs that come when a lifetime of struggle is finally acknowledged, when someone, finally, truly sees you. She covered her mouth with her hands, shaking her head. "But, why? Why me, sir? I'm just a housekeeper." And I told her the only truth that mattered anymore. "Because you, Miriam, have given my children what I, with all my millions, never learned how to give. Because your heart is the strongest, most valuable asset I have ever encountered. Because you deserve the world, and no one has ever bothered to hand it to you." She cried into my shoulder. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I, Daniel Hartmann, the Iceman, the billionaire, cried with her. Miriam is not the housekeeper anymore. She is the executive director of the Hartmann Johnson Hope Foundation. She has her own beautiful home. Her own car. Her own life, finally restored to the dignity it always deserved. And my daughters? They call her Aunt Miriam. She is, and always will be, family. That day, I walked into my kitchen angry at the world, stressed about deals, consumed with my own self-importance. But what I saw, a simple, good woman kneeling on the floor, praying with my frightened children, offering them the only thing money can never, ever buy, that moment didn't just change my day. It changed my entire life. Some people enter your home to clean the dust off your furniture. And others are sent to clean the dust off your soul. Has someone ever surprised you with an act of pure kindness when you least expected it? Has a stranger ever shown you a deeper truth? Tell me your story in the comments. Like this video, subscribe for more emotional, true-to-life stories, and please, share this message. True wealth isn't measured by the money you accumulate, but by the love you are brave enough to